On this episode of Crime Scenes with Coffee Beans, True Aussie Murders Caffeinated, join me as I take a deep dive into the disturbing case of the man who was once nicknamed Pugsley Addams as a kid and how he became one of Australia's most violent and detested serial killers. So please stick around. Hello and welcome to Crime Scenes with Coffee Beans, True Aussie Murders Caffeinated. I'm your host, Belinda Brady, and welcome guys, welcome back. And if you are only listening for the first time, welcome. Welcome everybody. Now, I talk about Aussie murders, true Aussie murders, and I do them as I'm drinking some form of caffeine. And without further ado, what am I drinking today? Well, I've gone back to my black coffee. So I've got my black coffee with small syrup, but I have a massive Stanley cup full of water next to it because even though it's autumn here in Australia, it is disgustingly hot at the moment. So as I am recording this, summer is hanging on for dear life. So I need to keep myself hydrated. So thank you guys for tuning in. This episode is titled Ordinary Monster, Serial Killer Peter Dupas. Now, I need to say a real big quick shout out to a few people who have joined me. I've got some listeners from Sydney, New South Wales, Brisbane in Queensland, Jacksonville in North Carolina. I've got people in Indiana, North Holland, Tennessee, and Ohio. So welcome, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I absolutely appreciate it. Can't tell you how much I appreciate it. And I just want to quickly address the intro. It has been fed back to me that the original intro was too long. So I've had to say goodbye to that intro. I did love it, but I think this one works a little bit better. So if you're liking it, please let me know. Give me some feedback. I'd love to hear from you guys. And as always, if you are enjoying this podcast, please give me 5 stars on Spotify. Leave me a review. Hit me up with a subscription. Buy me a coffee. I'll give you a shout out. And if I do get subscribers, I will be doing bonus episodes. Just putting it out there. Okay, guys, so straight off the bat, my sources for this episode is theheraldsun.com.au, abcnet.au, jade.io/article, crimelibrary.org, and theage.com.au. Now, straight up, I need to give you guys a warning. This does talk about sexual assault, rape, and murder, and it's pretty brutal. So if this is not your cup of tea, I'm giving you a heads up. Please settle in, get yourself comfy, get yourself sorted, whatever you're doing. If you're driving to work, driving home from work, driving to school, driving from school, at home, at work, in bed, unwinding, whatever you are doing, get yourself comfy, lend me your ears, and let's dive right into Ordinary Monster, Serial Killer Peter Dupas. Now, every now and then an evil presence make themselves very known to those around them, and it's hard to ignore. They make themselves known to family, neighbours, and at times police. And despite the warnings, the presence is able to live his life unsupervised, free as a bird. And all too often, this evil presence shows us time and time again that they simply are not to be trusted. And quite frankly, nor do they have the right to live amongst us. But one did, and the horror and violence he inflicted on the women who were unfortunate enough to cross his path have left such a scar. It will take these women several lifetimes to get over it, if ever. Now, this episode we take a look at the cold baby face killer who hated women. There really is no other way to say it. But he was sadistic and he looked like he wouldn't hurt a fly. He looked like a very unassuming man. He did not look like he would hurt you. Very unassuming, unimpressive even. Like, Google, when you finish with me, Google some photos of him, and I've also put some photos of him up on the TikTok page. you wouldn't look twice at the guy. So anyway, he looks like he wouldn't hurt a fly, but he, of course, did worse than that. And he was able to terrorize women for over 3 decades, despite being arrested several times. And he eventually was caught, but of course not without inflicting trauma so great. One of his victims to this day still cannot sleep without a light on and cannot walk down her hallway unaccompanied. Okay, now we'll go to the end before we go to the beginning. Okay, so on the 4th of October 1997, a local prostitute and recovering addict, 40-year-old Margaret Mayer, was abducted and murdered. Her body was found in long grass in industrial land near Somerton in Victoria. She had been stabbed multiple times and her breasts had been mutilated. 4 weeks later, on November 1st, 1997, Mersina Halvagas was repeatedly stabbed and left for dead in Faulkner Cemetery, Victoria. Mersina was there to visit the grave of her grandmother. And on New Year's Eve 1997, 95-year-old Kathleen Downs was found stabbed to death in her room at Brunswick Lodge, which was a nursing home in Brunswick, Victoria. She had been a resident there for 8 years. On the 19th of April 1999, 28-year-old psychotherapist and youth counsellor Nicole Patterson was found dead in the home that she used to see her clients in. She had been stabbed to death. Both her breasts had been removed. Now, I'm sure you're thinking these murders are connected, and they are. And they were indeed committed by the same man, a man who already had a horrific history of sex crimes against women. And it was only a matter of time before he turned to murder. And sadly for these women and several more that this man has been linked to, they would be the innocent victims of this brute that should have been locked away for years. So let's start at the beginning. Peter Dupas was born on the 6th of July 1963, the youngest of 3 children. The family initially lived in Sydney, New South Wales, but moved to Victoria while he was a toddler, where the family settled in and they lived in the Frankston and Mount Waverley area. Now, as there was a significant age gap between Peter and his siblings, and his parents were older parents, they babied him and they treated him like an only child. Peter said that though he was spoiled by his parents, he was made to feel inadequate by his overprotective mother and perfectionist father. Peter was overweight as a child, and this, of course, caused him to be bullied by classmates because that's what they do. And his classmates nicknamed him Pugsley, the son in the TV show The Addams Family. Now, he repeated a year in school and was a school dunce, but it would not be long before he revealed his true character. On the 3rd of October 1968, Peter, then aged 15 and still dressed in his school uniform, paid his friendly 27-year-old neighbour a visit, who answered the door nursing her 5-week-old baby. He told her he needed to borrow a sharp knife so his mother could peel some potatoes for dinner. The woman let him in, and as she was commenting on what a good boy he was, he lunged at her with the knife and stabbed her in the stomach. He then covered her mouth with his hand and bashed her head repeatedly on the floor after he had pushed her onto the floor, stopping as quickly as he had begun. The terrified woman called the police, later telling them, "He knocked me down on the floor and fell on top of me. He kept on stabbing me with the knife and I kept trying to ward him off. I felt the knife cut into my hands, mainly my right hand, my face and my neck. I was holding onto the knife at one stage trying to break the blade. I was lying on my back and he was sitting on top of me. He said, 'It's too late. I can't stop now. They'll lock me up.'" When questioned by police, Peter said, "I can remember having the knife in my hand. I must have been trying to kill her or something." Peter was taken to Larundel Hospital for the psych assessment, and it was concluded that he was caught in an emotional conflict between the need to conform to the expectations of his parents and the unconscious urges to express his aggression and his developing masculinity. And with that, Peter was given 18 months probation and told to undergo psychiatric treatment. Now, Peter left school not long after this incident and took an apprentice role as a fitter interner at General Electric in Notting Hill, Victoria. And during this time, he applied for the police force but was rejected because he was 1 centimetre too short. Now, side note, isn't it odd that most of these serial killers, these man serial killers, have at one point applied to be part of the police force and were rejected? Interesting. Okay, I digress. We go back. Okay, Peter's behaviour towards women had graduated to stalking them at around this time. And on the 10th of March 1972, when he was 19, a man chased him down after finding him peeping on his wife in the shower. He was then questioned by police on the 15th of November 1973 after he was reported for inappropriately ogling a man's 12-year-old daughter. And police were on Peter's doorstep not long after that interview, only this time to arrest him for the rape of a woman on the 5th of November 1973. Peter had gone to this woman's house claiming his car had broken down and needed help. Now, the woman wanting to help him let him inside her house, and once inside, Peter then threatened her and her 18-month-old baby with a knife and raped the woman. Now, Peter had tried this before with 2 other women weeks before the attack, but only managed to steal money from one house and flee from another after the woman told him her husband was on his way home. Even in those crucial early days, detectives saw the potential danger Peter presented, with one detective, Senior Sergeant Ian Armstrong, telling reporters Peter was an evil, cold, baby-faced liar who would possibly cause the death of one of his victims if he wasn't straightened out. And if only they listened. Now, Peter proved to be a difficult suspect to interview. He was a compulsive liar. He dodged questions. He faked breakdowns. And then he would return to his defiant self after his performance was over. Police also found out his rape victims weren't randoms or victims of opportunity. No. He had chosen each victim with care and had planned everything to the last detail. Detective Armstrong said he was a cool, cunning liar. You'd look at him and think, could he be this callous, this dangerous? But I knew this guy would be a danger. You could smell it. After he was charged with rape, he was released on bail and remanded to Mount Park Psychiatric Hospital, where he could come and go as he pleased. Now, during this time, he was seen entering the female toilets at nearby Rosebud Beach and watching girls shower. He was caught and admitted to the hospital as a voluntary patient and stayed for a month from January to February in 1973. He was charged with loitering and offensive behaviour, and the psychiatrist at the hospital stated they were unable to find a psychiatric disorder with him. And then the 21-year-old was fined a whopping $140 and released back into the community. 6 months later, at the sentencing for the November 1973 rape of the Good Samaritan who tried to help Peter, when he came to her house saying his car had broken down, the judge was not so lenient. Now, the judge, Judge John Leckie, did not hold back, stating, "You raped a young woman who was previously unknown to you in her own home and on her own bed. You invaded the sanctity of her home by a false story about your car breaking down. You threatened her with a knife. You tied her up with a cord. You struck her when she tried to resist. And worst of all, you threatened to harm her baby when she tried to resist. Whilst accepting that you were psychologically disturbed, I believe you were fully responsible for your actions." And furthermore to this, Dr. Alan Bartholomew, one of Australia's leading forensic psychiatrists at the time, testified, I am reasonably certain that this youth has a serious psychosexual problem, that he is using the technique of denial as a coping device, and he is to be seen as potentially dangerous. Peter was sentenced to 9 years in jail with a non-parole period of 5. And if you thought jail time had Peter turning over a new leaf, then no, we're all sorely mistaken, because no more than 2 months after he was released after serving 5 years, in September 1979, Peter struck again, this time raping 4 women over a 10-day period. A balaclava over his head and a knife was his weapon of choice. He raped 1 victim in a Frankston public toilet block, another 3 soon after. He attempted to rape a 5th, an elderly woman, but in her attempts to defend herself, she had been stabbed in the chest, and Peter, put off by her cries for help, ran, leaving her behind, bleeding and calling for help. Peter was picked up by police not long after and confessed to all of these rapes and the attempted rape, saying he was glad he had been caught, and the only explanation he had for doing what he did was, "I get the urge." He told police, "It just comes over me. I can't help myself. I have had this problem for about 6 years. It all started again about a year ago. I don't know if it was because my girlfriend left me or what it is. I just find it hard to mix with people and haven't many friends. I just don't know what to say." Peter was again before the courts and was charged with rape, assault and intent to rape, malicious wounding, indecent assault and intent to rob. Judge Leo Lazarus shocked police and prosecution by handing down a 6.5-year jail sentence with a 5-year non-parole period, despite Peter's prior convictions and obvious danger to the women in society. Peter served 5 years and 3 months, and a mere 4 days after being released in February 1985, he raped a 21-year-old as she lay on Blairgowrie Beach sunbaking. Now, by sheer luck, 2 men happened to be nearby, and hearing her cries for help, they went looking for her attacker, and they found Peter walking down a road near the beach, and he told the men that I can't find my car, when they approached him and asked him what he was doing. Now, of course, the men didn't buy this for a minute and called the police, and once again, Peter was arrested. He could offer no reason for raping this poor woman other than he had an urge. And when he saw her enjoying her day, he just felt like doing it. But he reassured the police that he was okay now and he just wanted to live a normal life. But Peter was hauled before the court again, and this time was sentenced to 12 years in jail. Judge Leckie was highly critical of previous attempts to rehabilitate him and said Peter was walking around with a loaded time bomb in his pocket. Now, unbelievably, while still a prisoner in jail at this time, he married a mental health nurse called Grace McConnell, who was 16 years older than him. And she later described the marriage as, "He insisted he was in love with me and that with my help he could come out of himself and become a normal person. I agreed to marry him not out of a particular love for this man, but from a sense of responsibility to helping him become a useful member of the community. In my mind, our relationship was mother and son. Our sex life was very basic, almost non-existent. I would go along with it out of a sense of responsibility, but it got to the stage where I could not bear him touching me." And surprisingly, the couple divorced in the mid-90s. Peter was released from jail after serving only 7 years of his 12-year sentence, and for 18 months he laid low, kept to himself, but his urge was never far away. And on the 23rd of September 1993, he attacked a 15-year-old girl who was horse riding. Now, she was only saved because she had the foresight to put her horse between her and Peter. She escaped and he took off unidentified. On the 3rd of January 1994, a 26-year-old bank teller was spending the weekend with her fiancé and friends at a holiday house in Lake Eppalock. Victoria. Now, as she sat on a toilet in a public restroom, a man burst into the cubicle wearing a balaclava with eye holes cut out and holding a knife to her face. The man kept yelling at her to turn around and face the wall, but she refused, and she also put up a fight when he attempted to drag her out of the toilet block. Now, put off by her resistance, he stopped. He just stopped, dead in the middle of it all. He just stopped and walked back to his car and just left like nothing had happened. Now, luckily, the woman was able to get his car details as he sped off, and she ran back to her fiancé, who just happened to be an off-duty federal police officer, and he and the others gave chase. Now, the man in the car, the attacker, ran his car into a bush. He ran his car off the road into a bush during the pursuit, and he was apprehended and identified. And shock, it was Peter Dupas again. And he had on him insulation tape and a pair of metal handcuffs. Police also found in his car knives, a black balaclava, condoms, sticking plaster, a shovel and a plastic sheet. And despite all this, there wasn't enough evidence to charge Peter with attempted rape, and he could only cop a false imprisonment charge, to which he was sentenced for 3 years. Peter served the full 3 years and was released on the 29th of September 1996 to find, surprise, surprise, that his wife who married him while he was in jail had left him. He got a job as a factory worker and lived in an apartment in Rose Street, Brunswick, which is a suburb in Victoria, and later moved in with a woman who apparently knew nothing of his background, the poor girl. Now, the pair lived in Pascoe Vale, which is in Victoria still, near a busy shopping centre. And this is where he saw his opportunity and struck, because that is where he stumbled upon his first murder victim, Margaret Mayer. Margaret was a recovering addict and prostitute and was a regular at the shopping centre near where Peter had lived. Margaret was last seen near the Safeway supermarket at 12:20 a.m. on the 4th of October 1997. When she was found, one of her breasts had been cut off and stuffed in her mouth. She had stab wounds to her wrist, bruising to her neck, blunt force trauma to her face, which was caused by a cinder block. Police were able to get a DNA sample of the suspect from the scene, so they found DNA at the scene that did not match Margaret's. On the 1st of November 1997, 25-year-old Messina Halvagas, and I do hope I'm saying that surname correctly, was visiting her grandmother in the Greek Orthodox section of the Faulkner Cemetery in Faulkner, Victoria. Now, police believe Peter attacked her from behind while she was bending over the grave of her grandmother's to place flowers on it. The young woman fought back, but was no match for the lunatic who was attacking her, and she died from her 87 stab wounds. Messina's fiance raised the alarm when she didn't meet him later that day as the pair had planned, and her body was soon found. Peter lived near the cemetery as well as the shopping centre, and a witness claimed that they saw Peter leaving the cemetery the day of the murder, and another witness also placed him in the cemetery at the time, as she had seen him when she went there to visit her parents' grave. In another coincidence, Peter's grandfather's grave was only 128 metres from where Messina was found. 95-year-old Kathleen Downs was found stabbed to death in her home on New Year's Eve 1997, and police investigations found that a phone call had been made to her home shortly before her murder, and the caller was Peter Dupas, though they've never been able to establish why he called her house. On the 19th of April 1999, Nicole Patterson's mutilated body was found by a friend who had dinner plans with her and went to the house to look for her friend when she didn't show up. She had been stabbed 27 times, both breasts cut off, and she had been stripped naked. Nicole was a counsellor and used her home as an office to see her clients, and neighbours reported hearing screams at around 9:30 a.m. the day of her murder, with one neighbour claiming, "I couldn't work out if it was screams of pain or screams of fear." The killer had been thorough. He had time to be. No one knew what had happened, and cleaned up after himself, leaving nothing for police to use, except there was one thing he didn't clean up: his mobile phone number next to his booking in Nicole's diary. But he used the alias of Malcolm, but he was stupid enough to leave his mobile phone number right there. So police called this Malcolm's phone number, and it was answered by an Indian university student who called himself Harry. Harry was asked by police if he had given his number out to anyone recently, and he said a man by the name of Peter Dupas had approached him with the offer of labour work, and Peter had used the guise of work to get Harry's mobile number off him so he could make an appointment with Nicole and leave Harry's number instead of his. Now, police swooped on Peter, arresting him at the Excelsior Hotel in Thomastown, Victoria at around lunchtime, and charged him with Nicole's murder. Now, at trial, which was held in August 2000, Peter pled not guilty and claimed any evidence the court had on him, such as Nicole's blood, which was found on his jacket, was planted by the police. The judge, of course, wasn't having any of it, and on the 17th of August he was found guilty of the murder of Nicole Patterson, with Justice Vincent telling him, "I note that you have an appalling criminal history involving repeated acts of sexual violence and which extends over approximately 30 years. You have admitted 16 prior convictions involving 6 court appearances between March 27, 1972 and November 11, 1994. All of the offences were sexually related or motivated. A number of them involved physical violence and the use of a knife. On 3 separate occasions, you were sentenced to terms of imprisonment for the commission of rape, aggravated assault, or assault with intent to rape." He also asked Peter how he came to be as he was before sentencing him. He also asked Peter, "How did you come to be as you are?" before sentencing him to life in jail without the possibility of parole. Now, on the 16th of August 2000, Peter was also convicted of the 1997 murder of Margaret Mayer, and in August 2006, Peter was charged again with the sickening graveyard murder of Messina Halvagas, after Melbourne lawyer Andrew Fraser revealed Peter confessed to murdering the girl in the graveyard while gardening in Port Phillip Prison in 2002. Now, apparently these guys were pretty close, lawyer and client, and the pair often gardened together. And on this day, the pair found a knife hidden amongst the weeds, which prompted a shocking confession from Peter, with Andrew stating, "We regularly used to find stuff hidden in the garden, drugs, weapons and other stuff. I once found a homemade knife and called Dupas over to show it to him. He took it off me and started handling it, almost caressing it in a sexual way. Dupas then started saying Messina, Messina over and over with this strange look on his face. I was certainly left in no doubt that Dupas murdered Messina." This wasn't some sort of jailhouse confession where somebody has gone in and sat in a cell one night and had a brew with another prisoner and somebody has allegedly said something. It's a lot stronger than that. Dupas and I spoke regularly, just the two of us. This was over months and months that he was talking to me and confiding in me. There was one occasion where another prisoner came up to us when we were gardening and started abusing Dupas. The prisoner was yelling, "You killed Messina, you killed Messina." After he had gone, Peter turned to me and said, "How does that cunt know I did that?" Peter, of course, pled not guilty and the case went to trial in July 2007. He was found guilty and was sentenced to his 3rd life sentence, with the judge saying life means life. Now, the sentencing was televised, which was only the 2nd time in Australian history that such an event had been allowed to occur. Peter is the main suspect in the murders of two other women. Helen McMahon, a 47-year-old woman who was found beaten to death on Rye Beach, Victoria in 1985, and Renita Brunton, a 31-year-old woman who had been stabbed 106 times in the kitchen of her second-hand store in Sunbury, Victoria. But to date, no charges have been laid against him. Peter is currently serving his 3 life sentences in jail, and he goes between Port Phillip Correctional Centre and Her Majesty's Prison in Barwon in Lara, a suburb near Geelong. He has attempted suicide several times and is described as a model prisoner. And there we have it, guys. The story of the man who showed his true colours so early on in the piece. I mean, how many chances was this man given? And he just went out and hurt women time and time and time again. Absolute monster. I think this is an absolute case of being born bad and you cannot fix it. And he's where he belongs. Finally, at last, he's in jail. He's not getting out. He will die there. Justice has been served. And there we have it, guys. Another episode of Crime Scenes with Coffee Beans, done and dusted. I'm your host, Belinda Brady, saying thank you so much for your company. And until next time, guys, stay safe, stay cool, and stay caffeinated. I will catch you all later.